the cool thing about digital marketing is you get feedback in the form of data that can make you smarter if you're using it well. So, you think up the best thing you can think of, and then think up another version of it and run both of them, and see what the market will tell you which one sticks.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Money, Mindset, and Mentoring Podcast. We are so fortunate today. We've got Dan Wood of Break Digital Media here joining us. Dan has been a very long-time friend of mine. I don't even know, Dan. We've been, almost 20 years? I'm going to say almost 30, but that's going to really feel painful. So we'll just say over 20.
Long time.
Do the math, man. Yeah, it's crazy. And the one thing that I can say about Dan that's been really exciting is when you talk about somebody who, whose ability to be able to reinvent themselves, Dan does such a wonderful job in doing so. He's gone through so many different avenues of doing one thing and then pivoting to doing another and succeeding in everything that he's been going into. And it's been a true joy to kind of watch what he's done. And for those of you who think like, man, I'm a plumber and I'll always be a plumber and I can never be a marionette puppet, performer. Well, guess what? Dan's probably the one who could inspire you that change is something that can constantly happen. You can constantly success through it. So, Dan, say hello to everybody and just a little bit of introduction about yourself.
Hi there. I'm not sure where to start, but
well, just tell us a little bit about what you and about Break Digital and what you're doing.
Basically, I've been like you said, moving around from a bunch of different fields over the years. And something I always come back to is that I really enjoy talking about digital marketing. And I guess, I don't know, I always like just sort of tinkering around with computers and stuff, even when I was a kid. It's just sort of that same kind of feeling, even though now it's more like creating automations in a CRM system, but it's still the same feeling as when I was hacking a basic program video game. So I'd start off with 1,000 spaceships instead of 100 at the beginning of the game.
Always need the hack, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But one of the things actually that is always that I found really unique about you is, it was very simple. I remember we were at a friend's place and they were talking about, this was when you were doing landscape architecture. In landscape architecture, you think like somebody's got to really know trees, somebody's got to know about, bricks and, all these other things. And what Dan really brought to the table is sure, he had his knowledge about, he could talk your ear off about the different, types of ferns that are in the world. But what was really cool was when he was designing this backyard, it was one of these things where he said like, this person really liked to entertain. And he said, well, what we need to do is to make this space move like how a party moves. And I found that really interesting because, and you've kind of brought that same mindset of not only understanding the technology, but understanding people through whichever space you're in, whether it was in making wine, whether it was in the landscape architecture space, whether it was in the software space or in the digital marketing space. You always really seem to focus on people and really how social networks work, both in person and online. So I thought that's something that I think if there was something uniform through everything you do, even when you were, doing the construction in the rental properties, and we'll talk about that later on, you thought about the people. You're like, we're going to design this kitchen in a way that, it can, handle the people the way that they operate, but also in the way they might want to entertain families and friends.
Yeah, I guess design's probably a common theme through most of like what I do on the advertising side really is like an experience, right? A marketing funnel is still like a user experience, a series of decisions, right? A learning experience, whatever.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think experience is great because when you talk about, and we'll go even further back, when keg parties we used to have, it was about the experience, right, for the people and how to
cider.
make it. What's that?
Making cider.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So I've got 2 apple trees, and they're big and old. And I don't know. My father-in-law pruned them, and I don't know if it was that or the fact that. Oh, I've heard a whole lot of rumors about why apple trees suddenly have big crops or not. But for the first time in like 6 or 7 years, this is at the cottage. There's enough apples that I've got a vat of cider currently fermenting very well. So
Nice,
yeah,
nice. Yeah, this was
organic.
in the day. I remember when you were, fermenting all these different wines, and I was a vagabond at the time, and I would couch surf for months at a time
Right.
at your place. I was a staple, and I always look back and appreciate that. So,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah, that was
amazing when you
fun.
look and you say, what you sort of came from and what you went through. I mean, and you moved around too, and but you still kept on trying to find your purpose, and I thought
Well,
that was interesting.
it's funny that wine came up because I was in the wine industry for a couple of years and seriously considering becoming a winemaker. But what I learned, when I got into that industry was that it really was like, obviously you have to have a quality product, but it really relied so heavily on marketing, which wasn't anything, I didn't know much about that back then. Although I would, to take a break from studying science and philosophy, I would read my roommate's marketing textbooks because they were just different.
Yeah.
But um, yeah, it seemed like no matter what I did as a winemaker, it would still have to fall in line behind the sales and marketing piece, and it felt like that would be a limiting factor
Well, and I
back
think that's
then.
one of the
So
things when you look at the principles that we teach is it talks about the idea that you don't necessarily have to be the best, but you have to be the best known. And best known always beats best.
mm,
And, when you look at some of the wines that they sell, millions of liters of wine, um, it might not be the best wine, but it's got the best brand value. It's the best known. When somebody goes in and it's just the name that they know, that's probably the one they're going to pick. Unless there's somebody
yeah,
like me who, used to go in and, and Dan, I know you do this as you go into the craft beer section, you're like, which of these have the most bizarre labels and I've never had before?
yeah,
And it could either be a great night of tasting things that are unique and different, or a terrible night of I'm definitely not having that one again.
yeah, yeah. I didn't want to leave Canada, and there's wineries in California, like a single company that makes more wine than all of Canada, and that stat might be out of date and wrong now, but
Mm.
um, definitely then that was like, well, kind of starting at a serious disadvantage trying to climb into that world when we're on the edge of winemaking climate. Anyway, a whole bunch of other things. So
Well,
ironically, I ended up getting into marketing eventually through totally different ways a few years
well,
after that.
well, eventually, what you could do is do some marketing for a winery and bring it full circle.
Yeah,
And so, any wineries
yeah,
listening, Dan is definitely got a taste for your business. So,
right.
the one thing that it's great is the whole idea, and this is one of the things that I really learned. And Dan and I've known each other for a while, and I've always been heavy on the sales side, and I'm always about being a really good classic salesperson, really good at follow up, really good at networking, really good at finding and matching need to people's requirements to people's needs, and then closing the business. And it's always been really going really well. And then I kind of came onto Grant Cardone, and one of the things that he always talked about was marketing is senior to sales. And I never really truly believed that until I actually started to integrate that into my business, the
Hmm.
importance of marketing and the importance of really good creating omnipresent style marketing so that you're everywhere. So that is a new thing for me if we talk about journeys. And I think it's something that can radically change the way that you scale your business is integrating really
Hmm.
good marketing. Of course, you need a great sales team to be able to take those leads, convert those leads, and close those leads. But to create more leads and more volume of good quality business coming in the door and getting all those people you didn't know, good marketing is so critical for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Unfortunately, it is. When my son was like, I don't know, old enough to think about it, he asked me like, "What is it like? What is your job really anyway? Like, what do you do?" And I was trying to, and he was probably like 6 years old or something. I was like, "How to explain digital marketing?" Like, "Oh, well, when you're playing a game and like an ad pops up, I write those." He goes, "Isn't that like, annoying?" Like, yeah, yeah, it can be. Yeah.
well,
Um,
I think it's one of those things. And I was talking with a lady the other day. We were at an event, and she said that this person just was so focused on one topic that she felt like most of the audience just wasn't paying attention. And I said, well, that's because he's not talking to most of the audience. He's talking to 3 people in the audience he's going to do business with that day. And when you look at marketing, a lot of the times that's the case. It'll hit a broad spectrum. I mean, obviously, the tighter you can make the marketing, the better. But sometimes it'll be a broad stroke to try to just unearth those things that are going to, pick up some activity and bring those people right away to you that are exactly the avatar, what you're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really important. I've been following someone who's been, I guess, brand magnetism would be her topic. Been following her for like 10 years. And
who's that?
Kat Howell.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. She's got some pretty interesting things to say about like finding your purpose. Yeah, a whole lot of stuff. And that's kind of where what I've been stewing in for a while, because I worked at an agency. I built an e-commerce company from scratch that I sold like 5 years ago.
Oh, that's right. Snappy Towels.
Yeah. And
that was great.
I've been kind of over all around, and I still like most aspects of digital marketing, but I'm like ready to go to like a deeper level, right? So, and that means not just being like putting something together for someone and like, okay, here's what you ordered, but more on the coaching side. So I taught a course at Humber College in digital marketing before COVID, 2019, when I lived downtown Toronto and was teaching there. And then we moved up north 6 months before COVID, and the person they hired to replace me when I left, for some reason, I think they had like a family member in the hospital or something. They couldn't finish. So I took over them and did this sort of hybrid remote thing. And this is the fall before COVID, when you still had to pretend that you weren't working from home, because that wasn't seen as like legitimate. If you had if you weren't in an office, then, how could you really get paid? Was like what everyone thought. And then they were talking about, they were looking into ways of making the course like mostly virtual, so that I could still teach it, even though I lived 2 hours away from the school. Like, I was going to come down once a week or once a month or something like that. And then ultimately I moved on to other projects. But it was, it was right after that COVID came, and they made every course virtual everywhere. Yeah. So,
well, it's funny. Digital marketing is not something that I think you need to be physically in place for, unless you're making content, I would think.
Yeah, I liked being in the classroom though, just because it was more, when I was teaching the classes virtually, and most people were sitting there with their camera off, was just talking to my laptop, and it's hard to get feedback. When you're talking to a room of people, you can see the look on their eyes. You can tell if they're paying attention. Yeah. You can see that someone has a question to ask before they've like put their hand up, because of, are people nodding? Are they falling asleep? Virtually, then, even though, I was talking to students who paid good money to be there, I wasn't trying to sell anything. They were there trying to recoup their investment from me, right? And so the onus was really on them to be paying attention and involved. But with a black screen, you just go, okay, does that make sense to everybody? And then, like, okay, how long do I wait before I continue? It was awkward. It was weird. But anyway, like, from that I learned I still really like talking about this stuff. I like helping people with their business, and I being an entrepreneur at heart, I'm always intrigued by how a business works and kind of what the challenges are. And I have a client now that I am onboarding into Go High Level, and he's a moving company. He's been doing it for like several years, and I was generating leads for him. And then, so he's like, look, you really, obviously, what you're doing. Can you help me, like, teach me how to do it, set it up for me, whatever. He's just a one-man operation. I mean, he has a crew when he's actually doing a move, but he's a small company, but he's ready to grow. He's ambitious, and he's been paying $500 a month to an SEO company that's done nothing for him because you can't win in his space for $500 a month. It's just not.
Yeah.
It's not genuine to suggest to someone that they're going to get value for that. Not that SEO doesn't work, but that you have to.
And let's talk about that a little bit, because that's actually something that's a really interesting topic. I mean, I know, with the different businesses that I own, I mean, the amount of phone calls I get and the emails I get where it's like, hey, I really love the stuff that you're doing. Let me help you, build, get more leads. Or you get those messages saying, hey, I've got a territory open now to give leads to you. Are you interested? And what
Mhm.
is that space like? I mean, obviously, if you're trying to cut your space and you're competing against those kind of noise, and a lot of those companies are, crooks in that space. I mean, I've dealt
Yeah,
with a couple where I thought, that sounds like a pretty good deal, and you sign up, and then they ghost you, and you've just lost whatever deposit. So, the idea of giving deposits to them, I always feel like thanks but no thanks. Because
yeah.
they're just too many fraudulent ones out there.
Well,
How do you cut your way out of the noise of that?
yeah. I mean, just before the call, I was talking about doing lead generation for contractors, and when I like have a legit funnel that generates real leads and it actually works, and I was doing like cold email outreach for that, and it's impossible to write an email that sounds real. Um, and when I was calling out too, I found myself saying exactly the kinds of things that I hang up on. Like, how would you like to close more leads without paying any retainers or upfront fees? And I'll go, oh shit, how do I even sell that without sounding like an infomercial? And or
Sham,
right,
wow.
yeah. So I started my emails just saying like, I know you get this all the time, but I'm actually for real. Like, how do I prove that? I don't know. And, so I mean, my
So
offer.
that's where I think this sales, like leads is one thing, and getting them to attract you. I mean, I love this idea when you talk about marketing. The idea of marketing is, and the difference between marketing and sales. A salesperson without marketing is basically like you're trying to catch butterflies, and you're running through a field with a net, chasing through, these big glades, trying to catch whatever butterfly you see. Hopefully you get the one that you like, and hopefully it doesn't die by the time you bring it back to home base.
Mhm.
Where what marketing is marketing says, I'm going to plant a garden, and that garden's going to grow some flowers. And then the butterflies are just going to come to the garden and land on my flowers. And then the salesperson is just going to, make sure they stay there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So my garden would be in the helping people figure out how to do this for themselves, and just
Yeah.
right, and that wraps in like the fact that I love the subject matter, the fact that I love teaching, and that's like when I mentioned the that soul searching bit with Cat Howell and a bunch of other resources that I've sort of been stewing in, um, getting at like, what's your greater purpose? It isn't running Google ads. That's not like why my soul's on earth, right? You can use that as a tool to
Really?
do,
Yeah.
to do something like, okay, like right now in the HVAC space, there are government grants for helping people transition off of natural gas, which is actually methane. It just has the best brand name ever. Call it natural gas. We don't call it like swamp gas or, you know,
Yeah.
methane, which we all know methane is a poison and one of the worst greenhouse gases. But natural gas, which is methane, if you ask people what is that, well, it's natural. So it heats my house. Like that stuff's important. But so anyway, there are government programs all across Canada right now to transition people to heat pumps and solar and more sustainable earth-friendly things. So, and that's going to require marketing and sales. Most people aren't aware of that. The people who can benefit most from that probably aren't even thinking about, um, you know, there's other ways to save $100 a month than on your gas bill that requires a bunch of construction and whatever. But the solutions are really amazing. And so I thought, okay, well, what if I just teach people? And I think you mentioned it's a me, we, us, them, we. How did it go again?
Yeah. So whenever you're running a course or you're offering something where you're going to teach somebody, there's always the different people in the audience. Like we talked about, earlier, where you're talking to just 3 people. The way to expand the number of people you're talking to in the audience and become a little bit more, have more offerings, is you can offer like, look, I'm going to just show you how to do this. By the end of whatever I'm doing right now, you should be able to do these amount of tasks, and then you'll have reference material so you can just go do it yourself. Because there's the people who, they'll buy a motorcycle or they'll buy their, Jeep YJ or whatever it is, and they just love tinkering, right? They just love getting their hands dirty, getting into it and just getting things done. There's people who'll never hire a plumber. They're going to fix everything themselves, right? And then there's the person who says, look, I kind of like doing it, but I want someone to kind of do it with me because I know I can create speed. I can get things done better, faster. I want to get to the goal. Getting to the goal line is more important than the journey itself. So the first people are the journey people.
Right.
And the other people are like, I kind of want to get to the goal line, but I want to know how to do it as well, because they don't feel like they can completely outsource it to somebody until they understand it.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, that's me with construction. I know enough about drywall to recognize good work when I see it and to pay someone what they're worth and to know when I'm getting ripped off.
Exactly. 100%. With me, I'm on the next category in drywall, which I'm on the they category, which is just find somebody, hire it. I know what I'm looking for in an end product. I know what my goal line is, and I can be very discreet about what my goal line looks like, but never put a putty knife in my hand. Never let me hang a board. Like
I wouldn't let
when I'm
you
cutting it
mix
with that
mortar
knife, I always feel like my
house.
knife is always way too dull.
Yeah.
What's that?
It's like, yeah, I was thinking of tiling because it's even more meticulous than drywall in some respects. And like, I wouldn't let you mix mortar at my house. No offense.
No, definitely not.
It's not what you're put on this earth to do, Steve.
It is definitely not what I'm putting on this for. I did design really good HVAC systems at a time, and really good geothermal systems at a time too. And I was actually out a new Nordic spa that's out in was it Thames? Is it Thamesford? No, it's out just outside of Woodstock, and it's a new Nordic spa that's out there. They've been there, I think, about 3 years or 4 years. And no, sorry, they finally opened, I think, in November of last year. And it was just really great just to see one of those come up. And I was chatting with him about all the stuff we were doing in the spa space with heat pumps to create economies of scale. And it was really interesting. But yeah, no, definitely you've got to look at a process and say in a process, you've got the me's in the world, the people who just want to do it themselves, the we's, which is the learning group. They want to learn. And then with knowing that the eventuality is that the they is where they want to get to. Because anybody who's looking at building a business is saying, how do I scale the business? And when you scale the business, you need people. What are those people supposed to do? Well, they're supposed to do tasks so you can focus on bigger tasks. And so that's where you get to the they people, right? And so if your offer contains a me, a we, and a they, you're going to speak to so many more people in the audience.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's where, like with specifically to lead generation, cold calling and cold emailing, and sales isn't really my thing either. I don't know how to say, like, oh, don't hang up. I'm actually the legitimate one. I know you've been ripped off before, but I promise I won't rip you off. And what's your credit card number anyway? Like, that's not.
If you sent them a picture of you and your dog locally sitting on the beach talking to them with a video saying, "Hey, Bob, I am a legitimate person. Here's my dog. We're on a beach. We're just up here in Palm Beach area. It's a beautiful sunset. Check out the sunset back here. I was just thinking about your business and knowing that today the sun's going to go down and you don't have any leads coming in the door. But tomorrow night when the sun rises, you could have 3 more leads sitting in your inbox." That's what I do.
That's a good idea.
And then all of a sudden they're going to say, this is actually a real person.
Yeah.
Right. And this is actually targeted towards me. Because one of the problems that you get from whether it's the duct cleaning guys or, the people who are pseudo tied to the phone companies, but not, who call you relentlessly, those people, one of the challenges with those type of businesses is they're just spamming everybody, whether, it's just a big, broad shotgun.
Yeah.
Right. And their message is a broad shotgun approach. They're not calling and just saying, hey, wanted to find out a little bit more about your house. We're in the HVAC business. And, we really like to share with you the importance about air quality. Right. And did you know that, 46% of houses, have air quality that's worse than, 56% of the mines in the world. And that's a completely made up stat, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds good. Right. But don't use made up stats. But the thing is if you led with something that might catch them with a hook before you go to the close, that's the biggest thing is you want to grab somebody's attention.
Yeah. I've had some success.
And you could say like, hey, yeah, exactly.
With sending people a screenshot of their ad that they're running on Facebook and just saying like, what's your ROI on this? Because I hate the ones that are like, I've seen your website and there's 7 things that we could fix, because that's always true. But actually send them a screenshot of their own ad and say like, because I know this is someone who's running paid media, right? They probably have an agency. Maybe their agency is amazing. Maybe their agency is really expensive. Maybe the ads don't work and they're paying for it anyway. Maybe they have an in-house person who doesn't really know what they're doing, or they're just killing it, and that's great. But maybe that person won't work for them forever either. So,
that's exactly it. I mean, if you did something where you said, "Hey, look, here's where I am on Google here, really close to you. You're down there in Toronto. I'm about 45 minutes away here, and I'm just here looking on my phone at your ad right here, and I just want to let you know that the sun's setting down in the background, and I'm here with my dog here. Throw the ball. Everybody thinks your dog's adorable, and then let's see what the sunset looks like when it comes up. How many leads did you get in?
Yeah, we could try that. Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's many different ways of doing things. I know one of the things that they've done from head office with Cardone is they've done things such as, sending out a box of pizza with one slice missing, saying, "Hey, I'm your missing slice." Right. And so just little details like that, those are things that catch people's eyes. Right. And catch their attention. Just kind of say, "Hey,
invoice.
this." That have to have a picture of a beaver. Right, pay the damn invoice. Right.
Oh yeah.
And sorry.
No, stole that from
strong.
Yeah, stole that from Cat Howell's blog. But yeah, yeah. So I guess that's where I'm. What I'm coming to realize is that building that course is a fun and exciting idea, rather than like, I need 3 more clients because I need $5,000 more income. I need 3 more clients. How am I going to do that? And then you're just like, do you need marketing help? No, nobody wants that call. I get that call all the time, and it sucks. So there's got to be another way, and that's where, like, proving first always works, right? In the past, in past businesses, it's been like a blog post that just explains the product really well and it answers all the questions that people were Googling anyway. It was the best piece of SEO. And it was the best source of sales because it was just helpful information. Yeah.
Now, when you look at the mechanics, we talked a lot about principles of marketing. Let's talk a little bit about mechanics of marketing. Okay. And, you've got social media, you've got Instagram, you've got Facebook, Twitter, you've got Threads now, you've got Twitter Spaces,
or X,
all these different
whatever TikTok, it'll be called next month.
X. Well, I guess it's called X now. Yeah. Sorry. I haven't got the X into my name. Vocab yet.
Speaking of X, just quick sidebar. I just watched a Hot Ones video where where Guinness awards a world record for the new hottest pepper. And it's Ed Curie, the same guy who bred the scorpion. Is it scorpion pepper? Whichever one was the previous hot. This is 3 times hotter, and it's called Pepper X. And
that's amazing.
The reason is, like, while they were sitting around, they're ready to. You can only get this pepper by buying his sauce. When the first scorpion pepper was bred 10 years ago, they made the mistake of like selling seeds, and then now everyone has scorpion pepper, but he's the only one who's got the hottest pepper in the world. He's the only one who has the
Oh, wow.
seeds. It's covered by patent and all that stuff. And so while they were getting ready to like do the press release and print the labels for the sauce and stuff, Pepper X was just a placeholder because the lawyers hadn't finished their paperwork yet, and they ultimately, the lawyers didn't get finished. They had to resubmit all the legal stuff to match what was on the labels, because so that's why it's Pepper X. It was just a placeholder name. Speaking of X,
That's amazing.
so now
That's such a good whoopsie on that one.
yeah, and I don't think it's a trademark problem with the service formerly known as Twitter, but that would be kind of funny.
No, I wouldn't
I
think
don't
it is
think it would
either.
be.
Yeah.
It would be fun to watch Elon Musk eat Pepper X, though.
Oh, he's got yeah, you should have a Pepper X on that guy's show that does the hot wings.
Well, on the hot ones, they had the breeder. He ate one like he was eating a cherry, and he's like, "Look, my eye's running a little bit," and because that's what he does for a living, right? Then they had another guy come up, and he was just
built differently,
like basically choking and crying, and it's otherworldly. Anyway, so yeah, mechanics of marketing. We'll get to a point eventually.
Yeah, so when we look at mechanics of marketing, and you look at Instagram, you look at Twitter, you look at any of those, which do you think there's a right fit per business based on the platform, LinkedIn or whoever, or do you think it's just be omnipresent and just win in all of them?
Fortunate is the company that has the resources to be omnipresent. There's just too many channels. It used to be if you had your Yellow Pages full page ad in the Yellow Pages and a couple times in the local newspaper and a 1-800 number, then you're good to go. Oh, but yeah, being omnipresent probably isn't practical and probably doesn't make sense. There's definitely a mix, and there isn't one marketing tactic that's going to work for everybody. It doesn't work like that. Sometimes you can find good value in a new platform. Like if you were early on Google 20 years ago, not quite 20 years ago, when clicks were 1 cent or 5 cents or 10 cents, and you could actually, you could get on first page really cheap. For a little while there, that was like a secret weapon against your competition, just because it was a new channel. And so every time a new channel comes up, TikTok might be the last big one that came out. The first bunch of advertisers that had a good TikTok video are probably still cleaning up. Right?
Yeah, there was a guy, I think it's Ty Lopez. Do you remember Ty Lopez? He was all over all social media at one point. He was doing, I forget even what he was doing. I remember seeing his ads all the time. But he was so omnipresent in the spaces. But what he said is, back when he first got in, his cost to convert was like $7 or something like that. And that same cost to convert right now is about 70 or 80 or even $100 on a cost to convert, because the platform competition has just increased so dramatically on a per platform basis. So I think finding the platform that's really going to work for you, I think is certainly going to help. Unfortunately, I think there is still the necessity to be as omnipresent as you possibly can.
There's a trick to that. It's called retargeting. So there's people that you've never heard of that I see online every day because I was in their shopping cart checkout on their e-com store 2 months ago. And that's hard to wrap your head around, the fact that there's a different internet for each person, because everything we see is algorithmically tuned to us based on projections of our behavior, based on past actions, based on geography, based on our device, our browser, the time of day, all that stuff. So there really is a different. I don't know if you ever logged into someone else's Netflix account, and just been like,
yes, actually, when you go to sometimes on the air, when you go to an Airbnb and they just have that generic login, you're like, wow, these are things I've never seen.
Yeah, like a friend of mine, he and his wife watch almost exclusively lawyer drama and true crime stuff, and sports. So Netflix at his house is soccer documentaries, And CSI, you know how many CSIs there are? Like, I had no idea because I haven't watched an episode of CSI since when I had cable
Yeah.
20 years ago. There's just too many other things to be interested in. So when I open his Netflix,
Yeah. So the
that's
idea of
what's in
the
there.
idea of
Yeah,
retargeting is
yeah,
huge. Yeah. The idea of it's used in so many different applications. And I think that's something that's extremely important because, one of the principles of sales, which I think follows up with marketing, is follow up, right? Is
yeah,
that just because they saw you once doesn't mean they're necessarily going to click or even click to convert. They're going to see you a second time, a third time, a fourth time, and that's going to build that buyer
yeah,
confidence.
yeah. And then,
Yeah.
yeah. So yes, I guess you can be omnipresent if you've got your retargeting set on your paid channels, right?
Yeah.
Or if you are really heavily infused into subject matter that the person's interested in at that time. Like now that I've watched a hot sauce video and I watched how to winterize hot pepper plants in your garden video 2 days ago. That's why I'm seeing this. Like my internet is all hot peppers and time tracking apps today.
Yeah. Yeah. Mine's all
Yeah.
jujitsu and mindset.
So
Business
you
mindset.
can,
Yeah.
in that sense, you can be omnipresent, but it doesn't mean you have to go around and post to LinkedIn and post to Twitter and or X or whatever, and all of the other channels. You want to be where your customers are. Sometimes they're just on Google because they need you right now. If you're like a emergency plumber, then that's your thing.
Yeah.
So you've got to test that. There's always the cool thing about digital marketing is you get feedback in the form of data that can make you smarter if you're using it well. So, you think up the best thing you can think of, and then think up another version of it and run both of them, and see what the market will tell you which one sticks pretty quickly usually.
Yeah, by doing that split testing or whatever.
So that's
that makes sense. So if people were going to say, hey, you know what, I really love the idea of this course that you're in process of setting up, how can they reach out to you? What would be the next step?
Through breakdigital.com, my agency site.
So that's BreakBreak digital.com.
Yeah. That's my logo.
Which is right there. Yeah, for the audio only podcast.
Cannot see the highly stylized banner hanging sideways, and it's a .com.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah.
No, that's great. I think that's a great idea. I think long overdue for you to start. I know you did a training session a bunch of times, and it really, the uptick on people's performance online that I've seen was absolutely fantastic. And I'd love to see that be pushed out a little bit more. So guys, Dan, first of all, thank you very much for spending the time today. I'd love to do another podcast where we just dive deep into one of those topics so that people can get a sense of what your training is like, and then obviously go through and follow up either for further stuff. I think
yeah. Maybe we can get a little more technical in some stuff next time and start to bring the actual content, not the meta stuff, next time.
The meta. Yeah. Well, but you know what? Sometimes the mindset around marketing, I think, is really important, and just knowing the importance of marketing. I think that's something that definitely has to happen.
Yeah. You need to, the guy that I worked with, Richard Carmichael, who's a brilliant brand and web guy, he said it's kind of like having a dinner party. You first set the table and prep the meal, or like having a restaurant, right? First you set the table, prep the meal, and then you open the door. So you've got to get that in-house stuff. You've got to get your website and your analytics and your brand and your product market fit and your delivery mechanism, all that stuff. You've got to bake that really well before you go spending money to bring more people. Right? You've got to build that referral machine and all of that stuff first, and amplify.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Beautiful. Well, thank you very much, Dan, and we look forward to seeing you back on the podcast with dropping a lot of value. And guys, thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you on the next Money, Mindset, and Mentoring podcast.
Thanks a lot.